Hello, in the name of Motovila Institute, we are a non-governmental institute from Slovenia, and our main aim is promotion of transnational and cross-sector cooperation in the culture and creative sectors. We are also Creative Europe Desk, national contact point for EU Creative Europe program. We are a member of On the Move, Culture Action Europe and Creative Europe Desk network. In cooperation with partners and international experts, we are organizing a professional training series entitled Beyond the Cultural Model. We offer new tools, skills and knowledge for the Slovenian culture and creative sectors. With today's webinar, we are going back to basics. We are going to talk about financial management of international projects. Enjoy the webinar, and if you want to know more about Motovila, go to motovila.si webpage.
Hello, just to say a little bit more precise, in September it will be 25 years that I'm working in NGO sector and providing services, as you can see, different consultations related to projects funding to donors and also to beneficiaries. I was working for more than 15 years for different donors, the European Commission, Civil Society Development Foundation, on different programs, PARE, TASIS, pre-accession, accession countries, accession programs. And I finished with the European Economic Area and Norwegian funds in 2011. Since 2012, I'm working in NGO sector as a beneficiary. As Ines said, I was running Institute for Documentary Film for 6 years, and now I'm working in CE Animation umbrella organizations organizing Animation Association of Central and Eastern Europe. So that's more information you can find on the web pages abbs.cz. So in case that you will have some questions, feel free to email or to ask for anything. Today we will talk about program, about how to prepare proposal. I know that we are all busy, very busy, always busy. We have many priorities. It is hard to define what is urgent and what is important. Sometimes it is pretty hard to tell a difference. Unfortunately, we are very often pushed to prioritize urgent and postpone the important ones, which would usually result with a lot of problems. Even Socrates had a point that almost everything might be turned into an investment if we are able to reflect on how it benefited our future. Investment is not just a financial term. More about finances you will have an opportunity to hear next time with the donors representatives, as Ines said. But today I will talk a lot about investment of your time. The time is, from my point of view, the only commodity, basically. And I would be happy if this hour or so you would consider as an investment which would help you with your future work. When we are talking about concept of that seminar, so we will talk about proper responding to calls for project co-financing, careful reading and studying the guidelines, mostly careful reading, setting of realistic and measurable goals to achieve with the project, comprehensive preparation of the financial structure of the project, and agreements of partnership. All of that is some kind of logic which you should follow in order to prepare a good project proposal. How to read and navigate through the guidelines, we will talk more about that, because there is a lot of activities which certainly deserve to be supported, but not so many opportunities for their financing. All of you probably have a lot of good ideas, but it might be necessary to combine your efforts with other entities in order to achieve financing from sources which could be inaccessible for your organizations for many different reasons. During the next webinar, you will have an opportunity to hear about possible sources of financing, but today we will try to emphasize what is important to you even before you start with the preparation of the project proposal. First of all, if you want to realize project with international impact, search for partners. It might bring a lot of benefits for you. From different way of thinking, you have to go outside of your comfort zone. You will get wider and deeper project impact. You will probably get access to more resources and possibilities for financing of activities. Do not forget that evaluation committees and external evaluators themselves almost always like to see good partnership projects. In other words, your chances are very often much higher. If we divide today's agenda to some 3 parts, in the third part we will talk about developing of idea and finding sources. In second, studying guidelines and setting partners agreements or finding partners, importance why you should find partners. And in the third part, there is talk about financial and other capacity of your organization, how to prove it to the evaluation committee or evaluators at the first place, because this is the first step when you will apply. It's not about contractor, it's not about agency, about ministry, but about evaluator. And preparing a proper budget. So after all section, we will have a small part for or place for your questions. So feel free to ask and to put your questions in the chat so my colleagues can present it during the break. Q&A, and after the seminar we will have some part for sharing of your experiences, to discussion your problems or thoughts. Simply you can ask basically whatever would you like to know about the financing of the project. So let's go for the first part, to search for developing an idea and choosing the right call for proposals. There is a lot of work. I can imagine that you are delivering your daily activities, you are running few projects, but at the same time you need to prepare at least 10 or more project proposals per year, together with everything else, together with the reports, audits, controls from the Ministry of Finance or Culture or whoever. This is important because you, first of all, you need to search for deadlines and see, is it a deadline set as it could be doable for you to prepare the proposals in time. Usually deadlines probably is, you know, all of you, that's 30 to 60 days from the full call for proposals. Next thing which you should check is eligibility status for the applicants. It happens that you are asking for a grant and simply you forgot to see or forgot to check, are you eligible organization? Some calls for proposals are set only for certain type of organizations, NGO, but only for certain type of NGOs, not for everybody. The next thing is checking of eligibility of actions for which support is provided. Your actions even are important for the target group, maybe are not eligible in that specific call for proposals. Simply check that, because do double check or triple check, because it's hard to bend your activities. Maybe sometimes you can do that, but not always. You need to simply see, is it possible or not possible for you to adjust your activities under that specific call for proposals. Also, you should know at the very beginning or before the very beginning, are the results of your project focused to the problem issued in the priorities of the call for proposals. So this is something which you probably know when you are developing your new project or simply extending your running activities or daily business. But in any way, you should have a logical connection between outputs and impact. Why? First of all, you should ask yourself and provide answer to yourself how your project and its activities or outputs can contribute to the achievement of the goals of the call for proposals. If you cannot answer to your question, to yourself and provide you with some proofs and some data and indicators. So don't try to pursue some external evaluator who doesn't know anything about your organizations. You need to believe that it is possible, and you need to set those activities as possible ones. Use a logical frame, define target group, their needs, identify problem, use your tools you have to achieve the desired outcome. You should think how you will measure your achievement. It is not important only for donors, but even more for your organization. Work with those indicators and see if you can be satisfied with your performance. That's why we are talking about defining quantitative and qualitative indicators. Quantitative indicators in order to properly monitor implementation, to see how much more you need to do, or maybe you overcome your expectations. And also, you always should report your results and outcomes via or through qualitative indicators. So this is a short first introduction. We spent some 10 minutes, I see. Just to summarize, consider about realization of your project with partners. We will talk about it in the next chapter. Have project proposal in line with the global goals or objectives. And the third one, contribute with project and its activities output to the achievement of the call for proposals goals. So this is some short, very fast introduction. Feel free to ask, or I must ask my colleagues, are there any questions? Ines?
Hello, yes, this is the right time to raise questions. So nobody wrote it down at the chat. So maybe my colleagues, Matea and Sabina, can raise some questions. They're here with us under participants. Just shortly. Or do you have any comments, Bojan? Additional comments?
There are no comments. Basically, all of that is something which everybody knows. Everybody should know that at the beginning of preparation of the project. The crucial thing is, as I said, everybody is doing its daily work and activities, but when we hear some organization, there is a new call for proposals, we need to see, is it simply doable for us? Is it for us, basically? So we need to see, do we have some activities which can be supported or not? Basically, it's about studying those guidelines, which we start to talk about it now, and to see at the very beginning, to invest, I'm telling invest your time. At the very beginning, if you invest some, let's say a few hours of your work and work with your team, divide the responsibilities, divide some roles in the team. Usually there is a big mistake that people are doing those projects as a one-man show. So just the director of the organization without proper involvement of the project managers or financial managers. Maybe the organization is so small, but there is no reason not to include a few people simply to make that work easier for everybody. In time and also in human hours. So if there is no questions, maybe
we can go on.
I can continue.
Thank you.
So we are moving to the my favorite part, when I will tell you again and again and again. Carefully examine and study guidelines. Everything is written, or almost everything is written. All rules and proposals, even sometimes, are not new. Even some of you might have an assumption there is no need to repeat that again and again, because it is obvious. Believe me, even it is true, a lot of people underestimate that. In more than 80% of cases, if you are following guidelines and properly answer to all questions, your chances are rather high. Find, as I said, few free hours in your schedule and study those usually 20 to 30 pages in the European projects. Note all basic or important points and topics which require or would require further discussion with your colleagues. As I said, project and financial manager, if your organization dealing with the several projects, so it's definitely needed to include more people in the realization and preparation of the project. It's important to define and distribute tasks, roles, and responsibility to your team. It's a teamwork. Preparation of the project application, it's definitely teamwork. Investment of that time at the very beginning or the preparation and the proper planning is crucial for success in the process of the preparation of project proposal. As I mentioned earlier, you cannot bend the rules to satisfy your needs, but you must adjust your project and activities to fulfill the goals of the call for proposals. Very often you have a project or activity which is running for years, and you need sources for financing. Not all ministries or foreign donors financing your yearly activity. Sometimes there are also those call for proposals, at least in Czech Republic. But one of the most common mistakes is when an applicant thinks that its long-lasting activity is as good and important that project simply must be supported. No matter what is written or requested in guidelines, often I hear comments, it is the same like every year. No, it's not. Even it is the same. They always want, donors always want some innovative aspect or something new. Usually they make a small change in budget sheet or in the text cell. Something is slightly different, but it's basically formal mistake which you will make if you use a wrong application form. Follow guidelines and choose attractive project title. Yes, this is something which shouldn't be too abstract or use a lot of abbreviations which usually are not understandable even to people in branch, not only to external evaluators. Always try to describe the situation in your country. This is the first thing which you should see or check, because when we are talking about goal of the project, it's to move something or some situation to make it better, and that situation is usually in the country, if you are doing locally or internationally during the region. Do not forget that the goal of your project is not and should not be just its existence and implementation. With your project, you need to make something. That project must have measurable outcomes or results. Even we can talk about really good and valuable activity. You should know what you would want to achieve with this realization. Think about some innovation, how to make the project or activity more attractive. Very often, you should provide slightly different outfits to the description of your activities in order to satisfy requests or provide appropriate answers to the questions in the application form. Basically, it is very important to be able to present your activities in a different ways, to make them more interesting to the evaluator. Also, when you are doing projects which you are applying for different call for proposals, it must be slightly different, because goals of the different calls for proposals may be complementary, may be similar, but not the same. So that's also important. That's also important to do when you are preparing your application form. Whenever it's possible, try to include data. Yes, including sources of use, statistics, and analysis. When you are trying to prove to evaluator what you will change. So important, it is very important to set up some starting point. And if that starting point was set by independent organizations or some analysis or some statistics on a, let's say, national level, so it is always good for you that you have a starting point which you can improve somehow with your activity. Maybe it is just a small improvement, but it is improvement, and that's your goal of the project. There is a pretty small chance that your project will be evaluated by the same person twice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should copy paste your project proposal from the last year, because you did not find for the proper preparation. So use your application from the last year, successful or not successful, but be sure that you make some improvement or to do something new. That's crucial, because nobody is interested to finance your projects for years, which is everything is always same. It happens, yes, but you will be surprised, and it will not be a nice surprise when one day you come and you simply realize that you didn't receive support you counted for, because for years you are getting that support, and simply one day it will stop. So in case that you are, let's say, thorough and preparing your application form again with some new view and new point of view, so there is a chance that your organization will get that grant, rather than just repeating all applications. Before you start to work with the application form, do not forget to read carefully assessment or award criteria. Nowadays, they are described pretty much in detail, including the breakdown of points. Applicants very often forget or do not see what is really important and lose points being concentrated to wrong, or not wrong, but less valuable parts of the project proposal. So when you have criteria, you can concentrate and see what can be improved even more in order to achieve maximum amount of points. We already talked about defining target groups and quantitative and qualitative measurable indicators. That's something which you should think at the very beginning of your project. How you will measure your achievement for yourself, for your organization, to see is it anything what can be done better in order to achieve good value for money, or maybe you should change something at the very beginning when you see at the beginning of the project that your indicators are not realistic, so you need to adjust that, because from any reason you can. This is a good example that pandemic. Simply, maybe you prepared some on-site projection, for example, and simply 2 months or 3 months, there were no on-site projections of your movies or films or whatever, so you need to change to online, as we are doing now. Basically, I should be, it was planned that I will make those seminars during the Easter, I think, in Slovenia, on site, but we are doing that online. So this is something which you need to react and be able to react even when you are preparing your application. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen as you planned in your application. Supporting documents. Funny story, last week I was consulting one Czech organization with the project, and they prepared a project application that was some 25 pages of text, and the next 35 pages were letters of intents from different friends, partners, organizations, professional organizations, but I managed to find only 3 or 4, I don't remember, 3 or 4 of them were mentioned in the project proposal. So why I'm telling that? Supporting documents should provide to the evaluator important and structured information which is not presented in the application form, very often due to limits of text fields. It's now very funny, but the limits are even in some grants, for example, in Visegrad, it's 1,600 letters, which is simply very, very small amount to describe something in detail. Try to put to the supporting documents only those documents which are in correlation with the project proposal. Everything else is very frequently considered as an unnecessary ballast. Really, maybe it sounds very rough or rude, but when I'm evaluating projects for the Commission, I don't like to see a bunch of paper without any connection with the text of the project proposal or application. It's nice to have a lot of festival receipts or letters of intents from different cultural institutions, but when they are not included in your project proposal, it doesn't belong to your application form. You should distinguish and decide what can be really representative and supported and why or what not. Rather compile parts of different documents, then submit complete annual report or statistic sheets and graphic without proper explanation. Annual report is important because there is possibility for evaluator to see financial information about last financial year, but also in annual report, I personally prefer to see some, as I've written in the PowerPoint, some maximum 4-page PDF with some attractive and nice information about your activities. It can be attached to the final report. Why not? That's also something which you will raise money for, some presentations or promotion of your project and your activities. So use that in that case. The most common mistake, as I said, it's simply sending enormous number of letters of intents. Usually, as I said, there are dozens of letters of intents in the applications, but only a few of them are mentioned. I don't know, are some of you familiar with the Bauhaus, but there is Ludwig Mies said in 1947, less is more. That phrase is still applicable. Please, please, please put in the proposals only those letters of intents or recommendations which are properly justified in the description of activities. Letters of intents should be written on letterhead paper expressing the willingness as well as the reasons to be involved in the project, including the basic information regarding the role of the partner and purpose of partnership, of course. Why you including that partner or that cooperation organization to your project. For me personally, when I'm evaluating projects, is much more important letter of financial commitment, especially for international and projects realized in partnership. Those partners usually have a more significant role in the project and its evaluation, and their letters can also be very helpful during the next stages of grant processes, especially proving financial capacity. So here, yes, prepare structure and actual CVs of all key team members and describe their roles. It's something which is also sometimes underestimated, and you are using old CVs or not structured CVs. So let's make your project look more professional and prepare that in a proper way. So that's all for the second part. So just a small summarizing. Do not forget that goal of your project is not and should not be just its existence and implementation. Very crucial. Just because you are doing that, it's not a reason to be supported. Put in the proposal only letters of intent, which are properly justified in the description of activities. And my favorite, try to submit the completed project proposal at least one day before the deadline. Don't press yourself, your people, your friends, colleagues, that it must be done last minute, because you will make mistake. Mistakes happen, that's normal, that's human, but there is no need to prepare a project the last day and submit it just a few minutes before the deadline. So if you agree, I will take a little break and take a little coffee, so my colleagues can prepare some questions.
Yeah, there's one question already from Jure. He's asking about feedback about eligibility of their project about opera. It's Slovenian opera about the March Revolution. He's basically looking for partners and looking for, I guess he's looking for a call for proposals. So he would like to know more where to apply. And our advice would be, my colleague will add something as well, but firstly to find partners and to search through these possibilities for funding. Maybe under Creative Europe, we are the National Information Desk for Creative Europe program, we can help as well. But basically, first of all, prepare an idea and find partners. So maybe Sabina or Mateja will add something as well.
Hello everybody, dober dan. Thank you, Bojan, for joining us. I guess all the points you underline would need additional webinar because they are all very complex. Before maybe adding to what Jure asked, his question is also very complex, but maybe I would underline what Bojan said at the end, that you should not mix activities you want to implement with the goals and outcomes you want to achieve. So I guess nobody can find the right call for proposal for a specific activity. You should always look about what is the goal you want to achieve with this specific activity. So this is the first question. And then, of course, as Ines said, Jure is welcome to knock on our door. And his question would need, I guess, an hour or 2 hours of in-depth discussion. Maybe just one thing, if you are concentrating on the Slovene perspective, then you should search for sources within national borders. And if you are trying to cooperate internationally, then you should not stick to this Slovene perspective, but always try to find the European added value and European perspective. And if I can add another question for Bojan, going back to the first part, when we consult our users, we also often face this topic of how to describe the context of your project. And your first bullet point was describe the issues we want to address with proper understanding of the context. And then we have two extremes usually. People who don't include any context whatsoever. And then another option is to present the 200 years of history, and I'm a bit exaggerating, but still providing so much detail of the context that the main idea is lost. So do you have any maybe concrete case or a suggestion how to provide the right balance between the two extremes?
Providing the right balance, there is no universal recipe, but you must answer when I say search for guidelines, are your project or activities are eligible. So that means, let's say some cultural project, or maybe I wouldn't like to use concrete examples, but when I'm trying to, I will answer as evaluator. when I evaluating project, I must see from the first 3 or 4 sentences that that applicant knows what he wants to do. So it must not generally be in a way, or it must be generally in a way of the call proposal's priorities, but you can see very fast, is it okay or not okay? Example, concrete. We want to make some alternative distribution platform for documentary film. We know that there is no way how to for documents, how to provide them to the wide public, because in the cinemas there is no so many documents, or when they are in cinemas, so the number of viewers, it's, let's say, 30 to 50 maximum. So we want to provide alternative site and distribution for that films. In project proposals, there is in guidelines of the program we find, so it was something called not just promotion or distribution, but it was promotion of European works online. So we need to combine our activities with on-site projection to provide, to bend our activities, as I said, and to provide description which would suit to make, which would suit to the call for proposals. And basically we change our activities, and that context was completely changed from what we are doing. So it was not a description of our activities in as you said, 20 pages of something which is not important, which is not the context of which is asked for in that call for proposal, but we simply changed our activities or bend it in order to get to try to get a grant from that activities. So I'm not sure it was the right answer for Jure, for example. If Jure asked context, about context, I don't remember, or this is something else, Matea. You are muted.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I know it's a difficult question. That's why it still bothers us. And I know that its case. I mean, it depends on a specific project, and but I guess the best answer it gave is if the applicants know what he wants to do, it will be evident in the first 3 sentences, I guess. And you know, my question was also connected with the points you underlined, like providing data and also providing sources of this so that they are relevant.
If they are available. Yeah, if they are available. Yeah, sometimes it's not so easy to provide starting point. But calls for proposals always saying you must reflect actual situation, because they are announced based on something. So in Czech Republic there is a lot of projects, or there was a lot of number of projects supporting Roma minority, because it was a situation with Roma minority which was very, very difficult. So it was something which was on the government level, or the Council for the Human Rights Department of Government, whatever it is, simply announced that's a priority. So this situation was where we can find the data. How many Roma people is not in schools or whatever. So it was very fine it was very hard to find those starting point documents. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. But if they are presented in the application, so that means that at least the applicant tried to find something. So that's also part of the context. If I'm trying to prove why it is important and why my activities will target that target group, or will help to achieve some outcome, or to have better impact to the target group. So that's why I'm talking about that context. It's complex, much more complex than when you are saying in one word as advice, it's not so easy.
Okay,
thank you. Maybe I can add something, and it's actually now, Bojan, what you said. Maybe for some of our participants, the topic looked very, very basic, but as you see, it actually in it there are many complex questions that we as advisors in this field meet all the time. So that's why we said let's go back to basics and let's open some of the obvious topics to really discuss them again. And from the things that you mentioned, I must say from the very fresh experience that few things are really happening all the time. And one of them is, don't be surprised, but it's eligibility status. People don't really check on time. They don't read thoroughly the guidelines, and then they supply, they submit their applications, and then they are invited to clarify some of the aspects of their organization, of their work, and so on. So this is also why we said let's go again through this. Because only relying on our advice is not sufficient. You really need to take those few hours, as Bojan said at the beginning, read through, have a good, I don't know, make yourself a cozy environment and go through every of the how to apply document, because this will spare you a lot of nerves on the later stage. And even though it sounds really obvious, it's really, really important. And this is something that we always say. And something connected to this is also what Bojan before mentioned, is really do go through assessment criteria and see if you have answers for every single point, because this will be something that the evaluator will read. Sometimes you have to have in mind that the evaluators have, I don't know, bunch of several projects, and they are searching for those things that are priorities or that are reflecting priorities of the call, and not the whole beautifully written text. So this is very important because they want to see things on this. Yes.
One addition, when I'm evaluating, so I have, as you said, I have a bunch of 20 project proposals on my desk, and I'm setting my own criteria at the very beginning. So it's important when you are answering those questions, try to answer not just formally, but read it up, read your answer after that, read question and read answer once again, and see how it looks to you. Because when I'm setting, and if a lot of first answers are lame or low quality, so your answer, which is a good one, setting me a level, and I remember as evaluator that your project is somehow good, and you got some extra points or some slight advantage for your application. So it's a lot of basically read, everything is written. So follow the procedure, follow the question, answer to questions, as now we are answering on questions basically, but everything is written in guidelines. Very in very few cases in that 25 years I was forced to call and to ask for more information. Really, everything is basically written. Okay, so anything else? Nothing in chat?
No questions yet, no new questions, so you can continue with your presentation.
Okay. So, capacity, financial and other capacity. I suppose those of you who try to apply with some EU programs are very familiar with this topic. Rules are pretty similar and based on the fact that applicants should have stable and sufficient sources of funding, securing the complete implementation of project, together, of course, with the grant participation. Financial capacity is thoroughly assessed on the basis of documents submitted with the application form or requested from selected applicants. almost always, I will talk something about those documents which are required, but almost always you should provide declaration of honor, but very often you must submit the profit and loss account and balance sheet. At least when I'm talking about that international project supported by creative media or international EU Commission programs. In cases of bigger grants, it will be required audit report for the last financial year. Maybe during the preparation, as you said, Sabina, that somebody is asked to prove additional documents proving the existence of the organizations and status of that organizations, is it NGO or not NGO or whatever. But basically, why I'm telling that, it is important to know that if you are not able to prove your financial capacity on the basis of documents submitted, you will not be able to get the advance payment in a full amount or in the percentage corresponding usually 50 to 80% of the maximum grant, which is crucial not only in NGO world, which is crucial for delivering your activities in order to have cash flow provided in full usual amount. There are many different scenarios how it can be solved. All of them are for sure described in the guidelines, but in extreme cases, responsible officer may even reject your application. That's why we are talking about searching for compatible sources of financing where different grant schemes can support similar or same activities. This is something which it's sometimes a little bit tricky to combine the grant schemes which can be combined. Basically, there are certain rules in Czech Republic, I'm sure in Slovenia, also about co-financing of public money. If you got some money from the Ministry of Culture or Ministry of Finance or that funds for co-financing of European projects, there are projects which can be combined, or grants which can be combined with that state money, and some of them not. That's important to have, from my point of view, different sources and ask for different donors under available call for proposals. I will go back one step back, and I remember some answer to Jure on the last question. If you are asking for different donors, you can combine and you can get even more grants for your projects, for your project proposal, but you need to know that simply not all of them are accessible to your organization. When we are talking about where you can try to find money, try to put some kind of calendar of the calls for proposals. You or your fundraiser, if you have fundraiser in your organization, if you don't, maybe you can do that, but you can search on different web pages. I can tell you Creative Media, Visegrad Grants, Central European Initiative, just 3 of them. You will, I'm sure, hear about that more on Monday, but those donors has pretty regular call for proposals in certain times. So when you check those guidelines, you can see if your activity or organization is eligible, or if there are available activities which can be supported by those grants. But when I'm saying that maybe it will not accessible to you because whatever, your organization is not so big and doesn't have some track record in donors database, which is very important, because if you are asking for a grant as a new established organization, or if you are asking for a grant for the first time, it is better to have a strong and well-known partner included in your project. Even in case of experienced or very experienced applicant, I strongly suggest partnership project, not only from the financial point of view, where partners can provide financial contribution, but also due to better impact and wider project outcomes. Your project can be supported on different levels, local, regional, even European, if you have a partner or partners. When you are searching for that compatible sources of financing, I would say let's about some concrete example. A few months ago, by the beginning of May, I applied with the third project for the same activity. The first project was applied to the creative media. The second, it was Norwegian funds here in Czech Republic. And the third was in Visegrad grants. Basically, it was 1st of June, not 1st of May, 1st of June, so a few weeks ago. The same activity or the similar activity, but it be applied to 3 different international donors which are compatible for mutual co-financing activities. It was for year 2021, basically. But you need to search and simply to see what is possible. Maybe sometimes it's not possible. This was a very unique situation that it was supported by 3 different call for proposals, but it's not done because we will ask for that activity support even on Czech side. So basically, it can happen that we have closed budget for that project. But maybe that's why I'm asking, or it's written, find and ask more sources than costs in the budget. Not all project proposals are successful. So this is something which you shouldn't forget, because a lot of grants you are applying for are not successful, and that's normal. Just go further. It's not successful, so next one will be better. Take care about sources, rules of co-financing of other possible donors. Not only about the rules where you are aimed to apply for a grant. Simply, there are different restrictions related to spending public sources. You know about that. A lot of sources does not support or do not support personal costs. For example, from Visegrad grant, you cannot pay personal costs at all. So simply, you need to combine and to see what is most appropriate and available also for you. Simply, when you are preparing or thinking about your project proposal, try to think out of the box. Try to think a little bit, to see a little bit bigger picture, to see what can be broader impact. For example, when we are doing projects in Czech Republic, we are doing what can be done in Slovakia, in Poland, in Hungary, because we know that there is a Visegrad fund which is supporting those activities which are cross-border. So I'm sure that similar funds can be found in Slovenia, for example, Central European Initiative, or other funds. So simply one step back, make a calendar of calls for proposals and search for funds. Simply, you have to ask more sources than you need in order to complete or to conclude the budget form. Study budget rules in guidelines. Regarding a budget, a long time ago I learned that budget is just a qualified estimation of costs. It's nothing which cannot be changed in the future, especially when you are applying for a grant. You are applying now and you are talking about start of activities in 2021. Nobody knows what will happen. Simply in case that you will get your subsidy or grant, you will be notified in early autumn, let's say in September. So you will have a few more months to adjust your activities, to simply make some upgrades or updates, and to ask for a change. But nevertheless, now we are talking about application form. So for purposes of the application form, that budget must be clear and understandable. Those costs in the budget must be necessary for the implementation of the project and in the adequate amount, usually in time and place. Not everything costs the same in Slovenia and Czech Republic, for example. You need to optimize the budget because its structural optimization should allow achievement of better cost effectiveness, which is always questioned in the application form, and can secure lower prices for services. Even the budget takes just 10, maybe 15% of points in the evaluation criteria. It's important, it's not measurable just through that. Quality of the content and quality of the activities cannot get high number of points without solid and structured budget. Other words, if you underestimate provided information in the budget, your chances to get the grant are significantly lower. Everybody has its own recipe how to prepare a budget. Unfortunately, one thing which is following me all those years is that there are completely different budget structure under the separate grant schemes and call for proposals, even under the same agency or administrator. I will tell you that in creative media, there are in every grant scheme is a completely different budget. So it's unfortunate, frustrating, yes, definitely. But if we want to make a proposal, we must adjust ourselves and our project and activities. I told you that. Yearly, I'm preparing between 30 and 35 different project budgets for different clients, switching from one project to another, always with different rules, procedures, but basic rules are the same. And this is something which is also, again, written in the guidelines. Before filling the budget form, again, read guidelines, avoid those simple mistakes related to ineligible costs. We are, again, as we talked about eligibility of the organizations or the applicant, now we are talking about eligibility of the costs. Sometimes donors put additional explanatory note together with the budget, or note to the budget form with some extract of the most important information from the guidelines. Avoid using lump sum and flat rates. Nobody likes to see that. Always use rates, units rates, number of units, so that it can be, that calculation method, it can be easily seen and recognized. Even what I would suggest, try to put note to the budget with the explanation to the evaluator how you did it, something which simply when you cannot find a place in the budget form, simply prepare note to the budget with the explanation to the evaluator. If your project has detailed and understandable budget well connected to the activities, your chances are very, very high growing up. So this is something which must be clear and understandable budget connected to your activities. As I already said, every donor has its own major categories of costs. But on the next slide, I will try to just explain or provide you hints for the basic 4 groups of costs. It's a summary, it's very, very, very short summary. Almost every single line in the budget has its own hint or explanation, additional explanation, but I will try to provide just short info about this. Once again, all those restrictions and hints are described, are not hidden in the guidelines and note or some additional note to the budget, which you can find in the application form or budget form. So let's talk about personal costs, which is usually limited to some 30 to 40% of the total project costs, different in every project. What is a rule everywhere? Those costs must be calculated on the basis of actual daily salary fee of the employee or service provider, always multiplied by numbers of days or hours worked on the activity. This figure must include all the usual contributions paid to the employer, such as social security contribution, health insurance, everything which is legally must be paid together with the payment. The personal cost must be usually also detailed by and described in timesheets of the work done for the purpose of audit. If you have employees, so you have pay slips and records from your accounting, so it can be proved very easily that he is employer and salary was paid. Daily salary shall be based on the average salary charged at national level for qualified personnel executing comparable tasks. The maximum number of days is also set on the European projects on 220. This is calculated by working days minus all vacation days and holidays time. So this is something which I don't know how it's in Slovenia. In Czech Republic is also number of working days set up by some kind of rules by the Ministry of Finance. Always try to identify senior employees by name, if it's possible. Senior employees and directors shall be identified. Also, their salary shouldn't be distributed over several budget headings. Respect limits, of course. Usual mistake is that you simply oversee that Excel form when it was automatic calculation is set up. So double check that you didn't break a rule and you have bigger percentage of personal costs than it's allowed. Regarding operating costs, which sometimes travel and subsistence are in operating costs, sometimes are not, but travel and subsistence costs are something which is very often controlled by all authorities, local or international. Why? Because usually maybe claimed only for journeys directly linked to the activity and relating to specific and clearly identifiable activities. So that means that your trips must be connected to that activity. You cannot use it for some activities, for example, board meeting in Zagreb or wherever in Vienna. You can buy that and pay that, but it must go to indirect costs. It's not operating costs. It's not project costs. So very often it's requested to justify it in the note of the budget. The relevance of expenses of activities and calculation method. Once again, if you are claiming something or want to put some personal costs or travel costs, you must put how many people is traveling, where is traveling, how many nights they are staying. So sometimes it's easy to put it in the budget form, but sometimes it's not. In case that you feel that you should describe it more, note to the budget. Put one page of paper next to your budget and describe how you did it, so evaluator can very fast and clear see how you managed to do that. Travel, avoid using flat rates. Okay, so we talk about that. For air travel, usually you cannot use nothing except economy class. For train, maximum is first class train ticket. So those rules are basically different from one donor to another, but maybe I will not go to the detail about all of that. When we are talking about IT equipment, I'm costs, try to avoid purchase due to possible complication with depreciation rules. For example, leasing cost of hardware and software, as well as their development, production, and maintenance costs, are costs related to connect time to online services when this is necessary for the proper implementation of the activity. If you decide to purchase equipment, it's say new or second-hand, remember that only the portion of the equipment's depreciation corresponding to the duration of the activity and the rate of actual use of the purposes of the activity may be taken into account. Other words, simply the period of depreciation allowed may not exceed the period of the eligibility of contract. That means if you buy a computer, usually depreciation of computer is 2 or 3 years different in different countries, but your project activity is lasting 1 year. So only that part of the price can be included in the contract as eligible cost. That's why I'm suggesting that it's really better for you to rent that equipment for the time of the project realization than to buying. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of additional work and proving, which is time consuming and also money consuming. So it is question: is it really something which we want to pay from this grant? So it's about you to decide. But I'm always saying rent equipment, it's better than to buy it when there is so many restrictions, or find some other grants where there are no restrictions about investment project, where there are no restrictions about buying of equipment. Advertising and promotion costs, also significant costs in the project applications, must exclusively relate to advertising and promotion of the action through the appropriate medium. May comprise all expenditure linked to design, layout, and publications, including billboard, sign posting, as well as the buying of advertising space. The other important category is subcontracting costs. This budget heading should detail any amount paid to an external party, which is not part of the applicant's consortium or the partnership, potential partnership, and is carrying out of specific one-off task in connection with the action. So usually there are subtitling, dubbing, printing, certain accounting services. Subcontracting costs are only admissible if the staff of the applicant or the partner does not have the skills required. And of course, all subcontracting costs must be substantiated by receipt invoices. In case that it is tender procedure due to rules you have in Slovenia, the applicant shall award the contract to tender offering best value for money in compliance of all principles of transparency and equal treatment for potential contractors, care being taken to avoid any conflict of interests, of course. The last category is indirect costs, representing the applicant's general administrative costs. Usually it's a flat rate amount exceeding a certain percentage. In European project is 7% of the total eligible direct costs of the action. But you can think about those costs, about costs related to organization, but not directly related to the activity. So that means rent of company offices, post, internet, heating, lighting, water, electricity, even accreditation on festivals if you don't have some budget point in your budget sheet. So that's all. As I said, it was a very, very fast and short list of those costs. It's about when you are preparing your budget, you will see you will probably have different division of costs, but those categories are almost the same everywhere. The main categories and rules are also very similar, so this is something which you shouldn't forget, basically. So I will go to the last questions and answer, and just to finalize, try to see bigger picture and think out of the box in order to get more money and to get more sources. Try to connect.
Mogoče se jaz vključim pa kar slovensko in v zvezi s tem, kar sprašuje Pia, se pravi, kakšna naj bi bila realistična ocena količine dela za administrativno-finančno koordinacijo malega projekta sodelovanja Ustvarjalne Evrope za vodilnega partnerja v projektu s 4 organizacijami, ki traja 24 mesecev. Pia, hvala za vprašanje. Ni enoznačnega odgovora. Predvsem bi rekla, da je odvisno od ekipe znotraj te organizacije vodilne, recimo, če je na voljo tudi finančna služba, služba za komuniciranje z javnostmi in tako naprej, je to že nek horizontalni suport. Drugo je pa, če gre za neko manjšo organizacijo, kjer mora ena oseba vse te različne ravni izvajati, potem odvisno je tudi od partnerjev. Seveda, ne vem, naša izkušnja je, da so v različnih projektih angažmaji partnerjev različni, tako da v nekaterih primerih si tudi to koordinacijo projekta nekako razdelijo partnerske organizacije, v drugih primerih vidimo, da gre res za močnejše vodenje strani vodje in da dejansko partnerji se bolj aktivno vključijo sam v svoj del izvajanja projekta, tako da težko bi ocenila. Odvisno je tudi od proračuna projekta, zaradi tega, ker je pri poročanju veliko dela povezanega s tem, da vodimo finančne odlive in dokumentiramo stroške, in mogoče bi bilo najboljše oceniti, recimo bi tako rekla, po enem mesecu koordinacije je mogoče, bi se že dalo oceniti nek obseg časa, ki je potreben. Ne vem, vem, da ni tak odgovor v smislu 20% delovnega časa ene osebe, ampak mislim, da je treba, da vsak v bistvu pri sebi preveri ta obseg. Pia, bi bil to odgovor? Prosim.
Mogoče še vezano za Pino vprašanje, čeprav sama prihajam iz filmskega področja, mi seveda tudi, ko so naše organizacije uspešne, delimo izkušnje in razmišljamo, in ko smo zastavljali ta seminar, smo govorili s predstavniki, ki so zelo izkušeni v programu Kultura, in smo rekli, a je smisel takega seminarja, in so rekli, definitivno vidimo, da tudi med partnerji različni nivo branja vseh teh smernic obstaja in različno razmišljanje glede budžeta. Zato bi mogoče bilo dobro, da se tudi, ko preden se lotite, seveda v idealnem primeru vsi partnerji na nek način recimo enako časovno se angažirajo, ampak verjetno je lead organizacija tista, ki se največ s tem ukvarja, bi bilo pa dobro že na začetku same partnerje tudi seznaniti z vsemi pričakovanji strani razpisa, da potem ne bi prihajalo do določenih klešev ali nerazumevanj, kar zadeva in outpute, cilje samega projekta, časovnice in tako naprej. Seveda to zdaj zveni vse banalno, oziroma vse, kar smo slišali, nekako se vam je verjetno zdelo tudi, ja, to že vem, ampak vedno se soočamo z vprašanjem ravno iz tega področja, zato je tudi namen današnjega seminarja prvega bil, dajmo se pogovarjati o vseh teh bazičnih zadevah. Bojan je, se mi zdi, nazaj.
Work. But okay, I'm back, so we can talk about that connection with your activities, but budget must be well connected to project activities. We talk about that, and simply do not underestimate importance of the well-prepared budget. We also talk about that. See how many points something can get you, and simply answer all questions. I'm ready for your questions.
Barbara asked, what do you mean by find and ask for more sources than cost in the budget, as the income and outcome needs to be balanced?
Okay, so when you are asking, maybe I was misunderstood. Find and ask for more sources than cost in the budget. That was mean that you have to ask to more donors for projects. Not necessarily you can ask, let's say, if we have a project which total costs are 100,000 euros, 60 to 40, so you have to ask for 60,000 for commission and 40,000 you will provide from your sources. So that 40,000 euros you can, of course, if you are rich and wealthy organization, pay from your own money, but usually you should ask for more donors to collect that 40,000 euros. That was mean that if you ask, let's say, Visegrad for 20, Central European Fund 20, and 20 from, I don't know, who else, audiovisual fund, Slovenian or Croatian or whoever. So that means that you will ask for that, but not necessarily mean that you will get that. Of course, that on the budget income and outcome of the budget amounts must be same. But I was telling that always try to find more sources for a project, but it doesn't mean that all your application will be successful.
Thank you. We have another question from Nina Ukmar. She's asking about the costs. Is it okay if the costs are different in the different countries? Because we have partners from different countries, so the costs are not the same. For example, I don't know, for hiring our equipment in Austria or in Slovenia or even in Bosnia, they're not the same.
Definitely. You must use local prices to be accurate. On the next seminar, webinar, I will show you how you deal with the project when you have 7 different partners from 7 countries. So you are putting, and you as a coordinator of the activity are responsible for the total budget. That means that you need to collect 7 simple budget, or not simple, 7 same budget from all your 7 partners, and to combine it in one partners. And all prices will be different, and all needs will be different, because in case that your Czech partner needs some travel, that doesn't necessarily mean that Slovenian partner or Slovak partner will need the travel. So you will have different budget lines in different budgets. So the short answer is that it must be calculated in the budget. Different prices in different states.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is from Petra Seliškar. Maybe Sabina, you can took over this question actually. Thank you.
Okay, I will read it also for everybody. In cases of development of projects, and Petra here thinks mostly of film projects, it is almost impossible to match grants for development with the EU grants because of schedule of the projects and different application deadlines. Many countries do not have development funds, or they are only once a year. Many times projects are applied for development are already in production. This process of decision making is too long and many times does not fit with the schedule of production of projects. Do you think this will ever be more flexible? How would you go around this? I will answer to the question, do you think if this will be more flexible? Yes, we are expecting, we don't have concrete information, but we know that Creative Europe Media sub-program will in the next generation, so after 2021 to 2027, the European Commission is planning to make all the 14 schemes more flexible and be more, how to say, understandable or reactive to the situation at field. So I am sure that this will go more into the direction of being more applicable to your situations or more accessible. And also maybe this is a good point to underline why this seminar was also very important for people from the audiovisual sector, because the media program will go much more into the direction of partnerships, of co-development, co-creation and collaboration. So all of this partner mindset will have to become as usual as it is in the heads of culture applicants. So this was also one of the reasoning to organize this, to make you more aware that in the next program there will be more collaboration expected from you by the Creative Europe calls for proposals in the audiovisual field, and we can learn, and I can learn a lot from our culture colleagues, and we can also share experiences. So yes, we are expecting that this will be more adaptable, let's say, for your situation.
Thank you, Sabina. The next.
If I may,
okay, sorry.
Regarding the development, I am cooperating with a few applicants from media, basically beneficiaries to development, and in Czech Republic it is really hard to get money for development. Also, it's simply something which probably will never change. And all those problems or questions raised by your colleague are totally actual here. It's something which needs to be done on a higher level, and simply I am afraid that now, after the pandemic and change of total budgets of national budgets, I don't expect that it will be changed in the next year or two. That difficult situation will remain. As you said, the media will have some changes, but this is also a question of a new budget. I was when we were in Berlin, it was a session regarding training activities, and simply all training beneficiaries, representatives have been there, and we were asking about what about new program, because training programs are ending now in next year. So simply the question is that you already mentioned those changes, which will be general, but we are waiting for the new budget. So it depends again on the budget and budgetary policy, and simply I'm afraid it will be postponed at least for half a year or year maybe, that decision making regarding the new budget. It was not totally related to question, but it was maybe important to stress. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bojan. Another two questions for you from Tina. She's asking about how to estimate this indirect costs for rent of the office and other costs, indirect costs. And the second question is from Goran Pakozdi. He's asking what to do if you have a financially weaker partner in the consortium. So if this is a partner with lower financial capacity, how can you?
For Tina, indirect costs are your dream costs, simply because you can put indirect costs something which you cannot put anywhere else. So basically, I didn't understand the questions. Maybe Ines, you can repeat me. What about indirect costs? Because indirect costs you are not claiming. Indirect costs you don't proving. Basically, don't need to have copies of invoices for indirect costs. Indirect costs are really costs related to running cost of your organization and are not directly connected with the project.
She's asking about how to, to put it in the budget, so how to estimate it. But I think that maybe Matea can help.
I can say it's a lump sum.
The question is how to calculate, how to estimate the extent of the. But actually, the answer is that Bojan mentioned the 7%. Of other direct costs, and on the top of it, I would again follow his instructions, read the guidelines, because sometimes it may happen that grant giver will give another rule on indirect costs. But Bojan, please add.
Yeah, not only that, in some application form, in some budget, for example, internet costs are legitimate direct costs. So you need to search for the budget and simply see what from your, let's say, indirect costs you can put as the direct costs. And everything else, you need to have some internal rules in case that you have several projects. So you have some internal rules how to divide your rent, for example, between several projects, or your costs for internet or telephone or whatever. For example, as I said, your business trips or board meetings or something which is connected with your organization but not directly to the project. You cannot claim money from the projects, for example, for your board meeting, yeah, or something like that. But how to calculate it? It's about you, but usually it's always not so big budget chapter. It's always smaller than we need. That indirect costs simply is usually eaten by rent and those costs which must be paid in order to run the office, basically. And Goran, if I wrote right, Goran asked about lower financial capacity of the partner.
Yes.
Goran, it is important to see why you want your partner. In case that you want financial partner, you have something. In case that you have some professional help or something else, it also must be calculated. It's not necessary that your partner participates financially in the same amount or percentage as you are participating. It's about partnership agreement. Maybe you can offer to your partner because you want him there. Maybe you can offer him, okay, I want you there with your professional help, with your expertise and something else, and your participation will be just 10% or not 10% of the total amount. And that's about financial capacity regarding the providing co-financing. And don't forget that in partnership projects, you are the main applicant and you are coordinator of the project, and that's your responsibility. So in case that your partner will not fulfill his obligation regarding the co-financing, it's on you, on your organization, because you guarantee co-financing percentage. So in case that your partner will not provide co-financing, you will provide it.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Maybe Matea can help with this because Rosanna is asking about the simplification of administration foreseen in the next generation of the program, so the next Creative Europe program.
Okay, very difficult questions. I mean, first thing I would say is that simplification is simplification only in the eyes of the person who considers whether something is simplified or not. What I wanted to say is that usually in the past we've seen whenever the commission or the agency have announced simplifications, at the end those were not really simplifications for the users. So I would not go and promote any kind of lump sum as simplifications. It can be also more complicated. complicated. Actually, I prefer real costs, as Bojan stressed, when you are preparing the budgets, try to imagine real unit costs per unit. But of course, it's easy as in Erasmus to just calculate, a lump sum and multiplying it. But actually, in the past, in the culture sub-program, we already had the lump sum for translation projects for publishers. But at the end, they were cancelled because it was too complicated to be fair in preparing a right range of flat rates for different regions and countries. Namely, the Commission usually puts a very diverse region into one. For example, the lump sum for a publisher in Slovenia was the same as the publisher for Northern Macedonia, and this was not fair for the actual situation on the market. So, sorry if I'm complicating, but if in the culture sub-program we already have this kind of simplification in using flat rates, we don't see this in future, while in media sub-program is the other way around. So there were no flat rates in the past, but they are or will be some in the future. So again, that's why it's so important to read carefully. And I would say, even if you are using flat rates, you need to calculate the real budget behind, so that you see that you are on the safe side. Bojan, would you add something on the top of it?
Yes, indeed. I wouldn't like to be seen as a devil, but I must say that simply try to think a bigger picture. You need to know how much money you need for your activities. So I know, and I don't want to push you to make budgets for your organizations. I'm pretty sure that at least half of your participants here don't have a budget of the organizations, and going daily based on budget or project budgets, basically, or create something from the biggest project, create something which is closest to the budget of the organization. But when you do budget of your organizations, you know how much money you simply need, you know which costs are mandatory for your organization, and simply you know how to calculate it. And after that, you will have several projects, 2 or 3 or 4 projects, so you can divide your it's about math. You can divide your costs between the several projects, depending on how much money the certain donor can provide for this type of activity. As Matea said, you can use in a project lump sum, but it will not help you with your budget, because you will claim some money and you will not know how much you really need to spend if you don't do that calculation by person, by day, by some unit. So it's about planning. All budgetary work, it's about good planning, especially if we are talking, and I really strongly suggest work with partners, make partners agreement, even for that funding, which will be helpful for you. For example, for Slovenian organization, that Visegrad fund is also accessible, but you need to have some partners from Visegrad countries. So you will get, let's say, I don't know, 20 to 25%, 20 to 25,000 euros are those grants, usual grants from Visegrad. And simply in case that you have international activity with partners from that countries, so you can also get some grant or some amount of money from the sources you didn't count for. So that's why I'm telling, calculate that, use that precise rates rather than lump sum. I'm looking forward to see how they want to implement that lump sum in the new budgets, but I'm not so optimistic.
Thank you. We have additional question regarding the splitting of the costs, and there's a question about some models for coordinators to be compensated by the other partners for additional work on the project. There seem to be various ways of slicing the pie. Do you have any practices, advices?
What is additional work on the project?
Maybe some additional administration work, or you have more activities, or because you are coordinating the project, or because you have more responsibility as a coordinator. You're financially responsible, and you know.
It's about division of roles. Okay, so I will prepare some practical examples for the next time regarding the partners. But very short answer. In case that we have partnership projects, so every partner has its role in a project. So estimation of costs, he applied also with the budget, and we have partnership agreement where we put in the agreement what are expectations or what are the obligations of both sides. So in case that's something additional which was not a matter of the agreement contract or partnership contract between the partners, so it will be solved by addendum to the contract. So if there is additional activities, so it will be paid or not paid, depends on that agreement. But of course, the project is a living organism. It's changing from day to day. So of course, in sense of a good partnership, it's not about it's not invoice for servicing or for some services, but that's also in case that it will bring something new and some additional value to the project. I don't have a problem to pay to partner additional money or to provide some other sources or services to the partner in case that it's a common activity. It's for the better of the project. I'm not sure did I answer to the question, but for me it's not about everything can be solved or agreed between partners.
We have another question, maybe more related also to the second seminar that we're going to have. But anyway, it's about how to lead different projects, but not so different, maybe with similar content at the same time, and how to avoid financial gaps, because when you apply for different grants, sometimes you get pre-financing, sometimes you don't. So how to avoid losing control over this project path. So you have a project with different projects with similar content or content that is combined, and how to lead all these projects and administration.
Easy. No, I understand. For example, I was living 6 years in that situation when we ran 3 media projects, and two of them were connected on one seminar. They were mixed together. Simply every invoice in your accounting must be put just once, and it's exactly topic of the second seminar. I gave you so many cliffhangers today for the second seminar. That's not nice. But really, the answer is that you must divide and decide about how the specific invoice will be put into the accounting. It's about development of systems of codes. When we are talking about financial matter, develop system of codes, so simply to easily identify that invoice. So simply, I have never had a problem with the audit or control, even from Brussels, even from Olaf, from every kind. I was controlled by any kind of audits you can imagine, but simply it's about organization. It's not so complicated as it looks like. I will show you a very, let's say, complicated project next time, where we have international project with 7 partners, I think about 360,000 euros or something, which was divided between that organizations, and it's yearly project, so you must follow that in time. You cannot allow that you will leave the partners without control, or leave your accounting and put everything together in last month or the month after project ends. So it's about organization. I don't know how to say different, something different. It's not so complicated. It looks complicated, but it's about your organization.
Thank you. Hvala, Bojan. Hvala vsem, da ste bili danes z nami.